What's going on YouTube? I hope you're well. In this video, I wanted to give a rundown of how to calculate the return on investment. ROI. This is one of the most popular phrases you'll hear within property investment. Everyone's talking about ROI. What's the ROI? Have been talking about this for years and will continue to do on, because ultimately, this is the crux. When you're buying a house to live in, what do you care about? Oh, what's the garden like? Oh, does it feel nice? No, when you're buying an investment, it's return on investment. What does that actually mean? It means what's the return on my money? So if I'm putting down 100 grand and that's how much it's costing me, what's my return? How much am I gonna get back year on year? That's what it means. So take good notes. By the end of this video, you will probably be in the top 10% of professional educated property investors, because this is the crux of property investing. So how do we work this out and what does it look like? It's not yield. Yield is different. So yield is just this. Yield would be the property is £100,000. That's the house. And the rent is 10,000. And you divide the two together and that's going to give you the yield. So that's going to be 10 divided by 100, which is 10%. However, this is yield. This is not return on investment. I mean, I do use yield sometimes for commercial property, but for residential property, yield doesn't matter. And the reason it doesn't matter is because just because the rent's 10 grand, okay, that doesn't mean that the profit's 10 grand. You might be paying 10 grand on your mortgage and your maintenance and your management and be left with nothing. So you could have a 10% yield, but make zero profit and zero returns. Yield, we don't do. We do what? Return on investment. So what's that? Return on investment is where we take the annual profit. The annual profit. What does profit mean? Well, profit means what you're left with. You only pay tax typically on profit. Section 24, that's a whole nother thing, maybe for another video. But annual profit would be our rent minus our costs. And then what's left is our profit. So what's the annual, the yearly profit? And then what we do is we divide this figure by what? We divide it by not the purchase price. The house was 100 grand, doesn't matter. We divide that by the total cash invested. So if the house was 100 grand and we put down a £10,000 deposit, that means that the cash put down was 10. But also there's other costs, isn't there? There's stamp duty, there's legal fees, maybe there's a refurb. So this is the return on investment. It's the annual profit. How much cash? Return on investment is cash on cash return. How much money am I putting in? How much money am I getting out? Annual profit divided by total money down. And then that figure, we times by 100 because that gives us the percentage figure, and that will equal the return on investment. And we want to get this as high as we can. Now, of course, there's other investment strategies, like for instance, flipping houses. This is assuming you're buying a house to rent it out and you're looking to get a high return on investment. So how do we work this out? How do we work these figures out? So it's very simple. The first thing we do is we work out, well, how much are we going to need to put down to buy a property? So let's say we've got a property. If it's a 100 grand house, I'm just giving made up examples. It's going to be quite a cheap, small house, probably up north, isn't it? So maybe, let's say we've got a house, a 2-bed house in Stoke-on-Trent, north of the Midlands, and the house is 100 grand. 100 grand is good because it keeps the maths super simple. So how much are we going to have to put down? Now, typically, when you're buying a house, if you're buying it on a buy-to-let mortgage, most lenders are going to require you to put down 25% deposit. Now, you might be able to put down less. Of course, you want to put down as little money as possible. You might be able to get a 100% mortgage, but that means it's going to be a residential mortgage. You might be able to get a 85% or an 80% mortgage and only have to put down 20%, 15%. But then you're going to be limited on the lender you can go with, and you're probably going to pay higher monthly rates. So we're going to assume that you're going to have to put down a 25%, which will be £25,000 deposit. 25 grand deposit. Now, that's just the deposit. So that's not the total cash invested, that's just the deposit. You're also gonna need other costs, aren't you? You're gonna need probably stamp duty. Now it depends if the house is habitable or not. It depends if you're a first-time buyer, maybe you wouldn't, but let's assume that you would. And stamp duty on a £100,000 house it's about 5%, isn't it? 5% stamp duty, there's a sliding scale, it will go up, it can get up to 15% if you're buying something a lot more expensive, but you're probably gonna pay 5 grand. Certainly if you don't know what you're doing. I mean, I usually manage to get around paying stamp duty just because I'll structure it in such a way, but we're just gonna keep this video simple. 5 grand legals. Then we've got legal fees. Oh, sorry, that was supposed to say stamp. 5 grand stamp duty. I'll tell you what we'll do to save myself. I'll do 6 grand legals and stamp. So your stamp duty, that's a tax that you pay when you buy a house. You don't always pay it, but you often do. They brought this in during the war to help the government because they said, oh, let's do stamp duty. And everyone was like, okay, we just don't want to die. And then they never removed it like they said they would and just continued to put stamp duty up and up and up. So the minimum you're going to pay is 31 grand. Now that assumes that the house is already in good condition. You don't need to do a thing to it. That assumes that there's no additional, costs. That's not taking into account survey as well. You might probably want to get a survey, which is going to cost you a few £100s. So I'll tell you what, let's call it 32. 32 grand. So 32 grand is how much it's going to cost you probably to buy an average 100 grand house. That is your total cash invested. So the next thing is to say, okay, well, if that's our total cash invested, let's not forget, what is the ROI? The ROI is the annual profit divided by the total investment times 100, and that gives you your ROI. Now the total invested, we know, is 32 grand. Next is what's the annual profit. Now, how much rent are you gonna get on a 100 grand house in Stoke-on-Trent? Not a lot. You're probably gonna get, what, £600-700? I can't see you getting much more than £700. So that's gonna be quite low. Now, again, this is why if you people that wanna learn property and do it well, they're thinking, well, how can I train myself and find ways to push the rent up? Like if you were to do serviced accommodation or HMO, or social housing, assisted living, there's a lot of ways that we get that £600-800 to more like £1,800 or even more. But let's assume that we're not. We're just gonna do this real basic. I hope you're enjoying the video, but this is a short ad break. The ad is simple. It's completely free. I'm giving you a return on investment calculator. Maybe you need one. You're learning about how to work out the return on investment right now manually, but wouldn't it be brilliant if you could just use a spreadsheet that would do it? I've created that for you. It's an ROI calculator. All you need to do is go to the description of this video and you can download it completely for free. Do that, it will come in useful, believe me. Anyway, back to the video. So we're gonna assume, let's assume that we get £700 a month rent. Now here's the thing, that £700 rent is not profit, is it? Because we're gonna have to pay, what? Well, this is what we're gonna have to pay. There's the 3 M's, which will help you remember the 3 big costs, MMM. So the first big M is mortgage. So your mortgage payments are going to be one of the biggest factors, because even if you're just paying interest only, if you bought a house for 100 grand, which we did, we know the mortgage is 75 grand. So if you've got a £75,000 mortgage on a standard buy-to-let mortgage, you're not paying less. Now, yeah, again, you might get the odd person in the comments, no I did, but generally speaking, you're not going to pay less than 4%. I mean, I know some people might get like 3 point something, but 4% is pretty decent rate. If you're buying through a company, especially, you might even struggle to get that low. So you're paying 4% per year on 75 grand, which is the debt. Now, can you claim that debt, those interest payments, back as tax deductible? And the answer is that depends on if you own it through a company or not, but I don't want to get super complicated and turn this into a tax video right now. We're doing ROI. So 75 grand, let's do the maths. If I've got a 75 grand mortgage, 75, and I'm paying, my rate is 4%, let's say, keep the math simple, times 4%. That's £3,000. That's my interest per year. If I divide that by 12, that gives me £250. So if I've got a mortgage of 75 grand, my interest on that at 4% is £250 per month. Now, you may choose a repayment mortgage, but any addition to 250, you might choose to pay 500. But that's just me choosing to put some of my profits back to pay off my mortgage. So that's not ROI. Because if you're choosing to take some of the profit and put it into paying your mortgage off, you can't then say, I didn't get the money. Whereas this is an actual expense. Paying off your mortgage is not an expense, it's a choice. Paying the interest on your mortgage is not a choice, it's a necessity, and it's an expense. Does that make sense? I hope it does. If you're confused by anything, I'll try and go through the comments, all right? So feel free to ask comments in the comment box, and I'll do my best to try and answer. Next, maintenance. Bear in mind, £700. I mean, we've already got 250 down. That means we're only left with 450. Eee, that's pretty rubbish. And we haven't even got management and maintenance and voids. So what's this? Well, management is paying someone to manage the property. Now, sure, you can manage it yourself, but generally speaking, you're probably, especially if you've got a big property portfolio, going to either need to hire staff or you're going to need to get a management company to manage it. They're going to charge you, if it's a single let, they might charge you 8% maybe. Some do less, but they're probably not very good. But 10% is pretty standard. So straight away, you're £700 a month. You're having to pay £70 a month just on the management. And it could be more. You know, there was some, especially if it's like a HMO or something, you're going to typically pay 12%. Some even charge more than that. But if it's a standard single let, probably 10% is fair. Could be a bit less, could be a bit more. Next, maintenance and voids. So maintenance and voids, what does that mean? Just because you've got a property that's in good condition, yes, the tenants might pay deposits. Yes, if they damage the property, they can pay for it. But in practice, there's such a thing as wear and tear. Sometimes the tenants might not fix it, they might damage it, they might not pay rent, you might kick them out, you might have to have a month here and there where you've not got a tenant in. Now, of course, you can, with good education and good training and good knowledge and experience. That doesn't happen to me very often because I'll vet the tenant properly, I'll often get guarantors. Often my tenants will be guests anyway, so they don't have rights. But just to keep things simple, we're going to put another 10% of the rent aside, just on the repairs, on any void periods, on any bits and bobs, which is just called being sensible. You know, if you're making £700 a month rent and you just spend it and don't put any aside for management and repairs and whatnot, then you're just an irresponsible landlord. So what's that leaving us with? Are there any other expenses? Not really. Insurance, you're going to have to pay. Insurance is very minor. That's about £20 a month. Very little. I mean, let's do that. Let's put this 70 up to 90, shall we? Maintenance, voids, and just insurance. So now we're going to get out our calculator and we're going to work out what our actual monthly profit will be expected to be. So 700 minus 250 minus 70 minus 90. It's going to leave us with about £290. So £290 is our profit. That, by the way, is pretty standard. A lot of landlords, you think, oh, these landlords, they're so greedy. They're making all this money from rents. Most landlords don't actually make much from rents. Where you make your money is when the property goes up in value. Capital appreciation. The rent, not too much. Unless you've got HMOs, you've got hotels. I mean, that's a totally different story. That's a business now. But just for little buy-to-lets, you're not making a fortune. £290, that probably is about what the average landlord might make in a property. So £290 a month, if we go back to our ROI calculator, we know that we need to get the annual profit. So 290 times 12 gives us 3,480. So now, a moment of truth. 3,480 is our what? Is our annual profit. Divide that by our total investment, which was £32,000. We already know, don't we? It's going to be about 10%. That's going to be our return. Times 100 to give us the return figure. And let's work it out. So 3,400 divided by 32,000 equals 0. And then we're going to times that by 100, of course, to give us our, there we go, 10.875%. 10.875% return on investment. The question is that good or is that bad? Well, I'll let you decide that. This was not about trying to tell you what's good, what's bad. It's about trying to show you how to work it out. But to put it into other language, if we're making a 10% return, putting 32 grand and making just over 3 grand a year, it's gonna take 10 years for us to just get our money back. So in my opinion, 10% is not brilliant. The real profit is not the rent. The real profit is when you can push the value up of the house. I'm gonna do a whole separate video about that, about how to push the value up on the house and about how you can profit tax-free from properties that you can push the value up. That's gonna be for another day. But what I'd recommend you do is maybe watch this video back a couple times, go on Rightmove, start finding properties and work out what you think the return on investment is. Do the maths, put it into practice, and I wish you all the best on finding your properties. If you want to spend a bit more time with me on a training session, I'm going to be running a completely free online training session over a webinar where I'm going to be going into masses of detail on exactly how to find properties in today's market and how to make it tax efficient. So if you'd like to do that, you know what I'm also going to do as well? I've also written a book called The Future of Money. So this book, The Future of Money, come on the webinar, get registered on the link below, and I will also send you a copy, PDF copy of my book, The Future of Money, all completely free. I want to see you win. So get the book, get access to the free online training. It's all below in the link, and I look forward to helping you become financially independent in property. Thanks for watching.